Mr. Khan, thank you being with RT. If I could begin by asking, what are the chances of your party winning these forthcoming general elections?
As a sportsman, I always think that I will win, even when, and most of the time I've lost. But this time I'm prepared the best. I mean, this is the best preparation of my party. We have good candidates. We are prepared now for government. We have a manifesto, a 100-day plan. And so it's the best we've been prepared. Therefore, I'm more optimistic than ever that I think this time we will win.
What are other major factors?
The other factors are that corruption has become a major issue. And corruption has become a major issue, because of social media. Social media has exposed corruption which the mainstream media would not before. And secondly, we have had two campaigns. One was a protest of Dharna in 2014, and then was the whole Panama case, where we were in the field and it was in the Supreme Court, we had rallies. So this time you have a very politically aware public going to the polls. Never was there such a public so aware of all the issues as there is today.
Nonetheless, your party has been at the heart of the controversy that you've been accommodating so many candidates from the other mainstream political parties, and many of them were tainted with corruption charges. In one way or the other, doesn't it really defeat the very purpose you've been fighting against?
Look, in a parliamentary democracy, you have to have the numbers to form government. If this was a presidential form of government, then it would be very easy to contest elections in Pakistan. But because we have to win at least 140 seats in the parliament, that means you have to take people who understand the science of contesting elections. This is not an election in Europe where you can stand up and then people go to the polls and then stamp the papers. This is a different election here. You have to have candidates who understand the art of contesting an election. In other words, who have to have the infrastructure to contest elections. So on a polling day in a rural constituency, unless you have about 2,000 trained workers, you cannot contest an election. Then you need finances to bus in your voters to the polling station. So hence we have to compromise. We have had a mix and match. About 60% of our candidates are all PTI, but there are 40% others who have come from the other parties to join us, and they've come from the other parties because they realize that PTI has the biggest vote bank today.
Previously, you said that the Pakistan was heading towards economic destruction because of the fact that the previous government had borrowed more than $40 billion external loan. What strategy, economic strategy or political strategy you have to really get rid of this debt and to not to go back to the IMF?
It is probably the biggest crisis, financial crisis that Pakistan, any government taking over charge will face in Pakistan. Never was there such a high fiscal deficit, never was there such a huge trade deficit, and never were the institutions in such a bad state as they're in Pakistan. Having said that it's not going to be easy, it's a big challenge. The way forward is immediate reformation of our state institutions, of our regulators, for financial regulators, of the corruption watchdog. Corruption is one of the biggest problems. We do not have enough money to pay for our expenditure. And to cut corruption and to raise revenues, we have to fix those state institutions. The FBR, which raises revenues, NAB, which tackles corruption, strengthen them, improve institutions, improve governance to bring in investment. And in a nutshell, we have to reform ourselves. We have to reform our state institutions to be viable, to have enough money to develop our human beings. The other challenge is to spend money on our human beings, on our children, on their education, on health, on clean drinking water, on employment. But we don't have enough money right now. So make the state strong enough, the institutions, so we can raise the money, cut down corruption, good governance, attract investment, and then spend money on our human development.
You've been very critical about US involvement in Pakistan's domestic affairs, particularly under the cover of war on terror. What kind of bilateral relationship we can foresee once you are in power?
Pakistan today needs stability more than any other time in its history. We need peace, stability. We need good relations, and we certainly do need good relationship with the US. US is a superpower, cannot be ignored. Unfortunately, our relationship has been very one-sided in the past. The relationship has been where the US has used Pakistan as a hired gun. So we are paid to do their work, to fight their war. This has cost Pakistan over $100 billion lost to the economy. Over 70,000 people, Pakistanis, have died. They are still dying today. The terrorism is still not been overcome. So what we want is a relationship with the US where it is mutually beneficial to both. It's not a one-sided relationship like it's been.
What kind of shape of those relationships you foresee?
Well, Pakistan, for instance, in Afghanistan, the US has been stuck in a quagmire for 16 years. And that's mainly because it's a one-dimensional approach in Afghanistan, which is military solution. Where Pakistan should help is not in doing more in terms of military, because Pakistan has already damaged itself enough from fighting the US war. What we should do is, we should help US in peace settlement, in a political settlement in Afghanistan. Pakistan do whatever it can in helping these peace talks. And whatever leverage Pakistan has over Taliban should be used there, rather than being ordered to fight the Taliban, because the war is not ending in Afghanistan. So for 16 years, the war has gone on.
What kind of strategy you have whereby you can help Americans to resolve this 17 years long insurgency?
Firstly, the Americans should have learned from the Soviet experience. The Soviets would probably best guide the Americans that military solution is not an answer in Afghanistan. And therefore, the only other solution is political. So my advice would be to the Americans that the surge has failed. 16 years of war trying to force a win, that has failed. At one point, there were 150,000 NATO troops, 250,000 Afghan troops, and still the Americans could not force a military solution. So my advice would be that Pakistan might help them along with the neighbors of Afghanistan.
On one hand, Americans are seeking Pakistan's help to resolve insurgency in Afghanistan, but continuously they've been pressurizing Pakistan to do more, saying there are Afghan Taliban sanctuaries on Pakistani side of the border. How would you handle that kind of scenario?
Very unfair of the Americans. Here's a country, Pakistan, that had nothing to do with 9/11, no Pakistani involved. Al-Qaeda was in Afghanistan. There were no militant Taliban in Pakistan. So Pakistan was forced into this war. Pakistan lost 70,000 people dead. Pakistan lost over $100 billion lost to the economy. Tribal areas devastated. Still, they have not recovered. They're in a bad shape today. And yet, at the end of it, to be blamed for the US failure in Afghanistan is tragic. It's painful for people of Pakistan. If the US are blaming Pakistan for the lack of success because of 2,000 or 3,000 supposedly Haqqani insurgents, because of them they couldn't win, it is just the most ridiculous thing, because at one point there were 150,000 NATO troops, the greatest military machine in the world, then 250,000 Afghan troops, and to think that because of these 2,000-3,000 insurgents from Pakistan, they couldn't win in 16 years, it is very unfair on Pakistan. So the solution is peace. The solution is political. It is getting all the players, the neighbors of Afghanistan, and whatever leverage Pakistan can have on the Taliban, to put them in a dialogue, on a table, and have a political solution. There is no solution but political solution.
Just few weeks back, both Pakistan and the US, they stick to the movement of their diplomats within the 40-kilometer range. And at the heart of the behind the scene, there is a controversy, there is a row between both countries that the American embassy in Islamabad, they have launched some sort of espionage network. And you might recall there was a report by Edward Snowden, the US intelligence contractor, and he said that more than half of $52 billion black CIA budget is spent on espionage network in Pakistan on two things, where ISI is hiding anti-US militants and where are Pakistan's nuclear warheads. So it's a big kind of challenge. How would you handle it?
Change the nature of relationship between the US and Pakistan. The US has looked upon Pakistan as an ally at one point and then as an enemy at the same time. So it's the only time in history I can recall where an ally keeps bombing you the same, it's ally. I mean, the drones were bombing, killing Pakistani people, causing collateral damage in Pakistan territory. It's never happened. I don't know of any situation like that which has happened before. And that's why the anti-Americanism rose in Pakistan, because people couldn't work out, are we an ally or are we an enemy? And that's why the whole relationship between the US and Pakistan needs to be reset. And it can happen because I think the US will need Pakistan in finding a political solution in Afghanistan. And of course, US is a superpower and Pakistan wants to be on the right side.
Can Pakistan really survive without US financial aid and the military hardware? What kind of strategy your party could possibly have if you come into power?
Well, first have a decent, good relationship with the US. That's number one. Secondly, Pakistan should not rely on foreign assistance for survival. I started your program by saying Pakistan needs to put its house in order. Pakistan needs to fix its financial institutions, its state institutions, and Pakistan will not survive by getting handouts from some foreign country. Pakistan will survive by standing on its own feet, balancing its budget, improving trade, creating wealth, bringing in investment. That's how Pakistan will survive. The problem is there's too much dependence on foreign assistance, foreign loans, and we are in a present situation because we take the easy option. We lose our independence, and at the same time, we do not do the required structured changes, the reforms that need to be done in Pakistan.
Realistically speaking, will Pakistan be really able to have a genuine independent foreign policy? Because US influence has been there. It's a decades long. It's not going to go away within a matter of weeks or months.
I think the world is changing. The world is changing fast. It used to be two superpowers, then became one superpower. Now you have emerging other powerful countries. China has emerged. The Russians looks like they're getting stronger. So anyway, the world is no longer the same where one country, one strong power can force other countries to go against their own interest. My objection to our Pakistan-US relation was that Pakistan was required to do things that went against our national interest, that went against the interest of the people of Pakistan. That should not happen. Foreign policy should be where the interests of your people are protected, but not where you go against their interests.
Possibly you are going to rule over a country which has a history of repeated military takeovers, and then there have been allegations of military interference behind the scene. How you are going to handle it?
Pakistan, the political thinking in Pakistan has evolved. In the old days, a democratic government would flounder and you would have military come back. And it started off because Pakistan was a security. It started off as a security state. There was a threat that will Pakistan survive with a neighbor 7 times its size, a hostile neighbor, because we started on a bad footing. And so the fear of survival made the security more important. And therefore, whenever the security forces felt that the democratic governments were floundering, they would take over. But now, as we sit in 2018, Pakistan's political thought has evolved to a point where everyone realized there's a consensus, even amongst the military, that martial law is not an option. So therefore, I do not think that we will have those fears again. When you have very incompetent, corrupt governments, then they lose space to the military, which is far more organized, more efficient. It's a strong institution. But it's because of the failure of democratic governments to perform. The only strength, the power of a democratic government comes through its performance. If it performs, it helps the people get attached to the government. That is its strength.
On a lighter note, towards the very end of our interview, what could be possibly your first order as a Prime Minister of Pakistan if your party wins the elections?
Do you know, I haven't really thought about it, and there is a reason for it. My conditioning is as a sportsman. A sportsman does not think he's winning until the last ball is bowled. So until I win, obviously we have a plan, but until, we win this election, only then will I start thinking of what will be.
But you have a 100 days plan.
We have a 100 days plan, but you talked about the first move. The first move will be once we realize that we are winning the election.
Thank you very much for your time, Khan sir.